Just when the WNBA thought the buzz around Caitlin Clark couldn't get any louder, hold up, a whole new twist just shook the conversation, as Reese seems to be locking in on a bold new mission. And now fans are side-eyeing the situation, wondering if this rivalry just leveled up into something way more strategic. But listen, is this really the start of a power shift, or just more hype trying to force a rivalry the court hasn't fully proven yet? Because when the spotlight gets this intense, who actually shows up when the game starts talking louder than the headlines? Some rivalries, they're built-in highlight reels. Some get pushed by fans who just love the drama. But then, hold up, you've got the ones that feel like pure chaos designed them from the jump. Because every time things start to cool off, something else jumps right back into the spotlight. And just like that, the entire basketball world is heated all over again, like peace was never even part of the script. And right in the middle of all that chaos, listen to this, sits a storyline that just refuses to play out the normal way, because one side keeps making history at a pace that honestly feels unfair, while the other keeps pushing the idea that the gap isn't as big as it looks, even though the numbers, the film, and the results keep telling a completely different story. It all kicks off with a bold claim. Hold up, that sounds less like a real basketball goal and more like a headline built to break the internet, where Reese is being framed as chasing down Caitlin Clark, a player who didn't just enter the league, she instantly shifted all the attention toward herself. Every move she makes, listen, it's like gravity itself just switched directions overnight. The reaction to that ambition, listen, this is where it starts getting wild, almost feels like satire at this point. Because instead of a calm, rational sports debate, it turns into a full-blown culture war dressed up as basketball talk, with fans choosing sides as if the future of the game is on the line, driven by social media arguments. On one side of this whole thing is Caitlin Clark, a player whose impact goes way beyond just points and assists. It's about how every single possession feels like something special might happen. Like seriously, it's as if the game pauses for a second just to see what she's about to pull off next. Her style isn't loud or forced, it's built on doing the same elite things over and over until greatness just becomes the standard. And once that standard is set, it becomes an expectation, and then that expectation starts to feel inevitable. Because the moment she steps on the court, even the defense looks like it's already chasing a story that hasn't fully played out yet. Now, on the other side, hold up, you've got Angel Reese, and there's no denying her presence, her personality, and that undeniable confidence. She brings an energy where every moment feels like it's happening under a spotlight, even when it's just the arena lights above her. But here's the thing. Confidence in sports can flip on you real quick if you start turning it into predictions too early, especially when this comparison isn't really between two players on the same path, because one is still figuring out her full identity at the pro level, while the other is already redefining what that identity even means across the entire league. While one narrative is all about future dominance, the other is already out there collecting receipts in real time, stacking performances like every game is another page in a running statistical argument that doesn't even need commentary to speak for itself. And that's exactly where things start to feel almost theatrical, because Angel Reese's rise from college dominance into the pro level is being watched under a microscope every single night. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's transition into the league doesn't even look like a transition. It looks like a continuation of something that was already fully locked in. At LSU, Reese built her name on pure energy, relentless rebounding, and a competitive fire that made her impossible to overlook in any setting. And that energy hit its peak in that unforgettable NCAA championship moment, where she turned a high-pressure stage into a full personal statement, feeding off the crowd, the moment, and that tension between two rising stars who both knew the spotlight couldn't comfortably hold them at the same time. It was bold, it was emotional, and it was flat out unforgettable. But listen, it's also one of those moments that changes depending on who's telling the story, because while one side saw pure swagger and competitive fire from Angel Reese, the other side felt like a rivalry was being written into existence before the pro chapter even started. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark kept doing what she had already been doing, turning games into scoring showcases that felt less like individual performances and more like controlled experiments in offensive efficiency. Every possession she touches has structure, but also that unpredictability that keeps defenses guessing at every turn. Now, once those two paths hit the professional stage, hold up. The contrast didn't fade at all. It actually got louder. Because the WNBA doesn't care about reputation, it forces adaptation, and it forces you to live with consequences every night. And in that environment, Clark's ability to score while still creating for others has made her one of the most closely watched rookies in recent memory. With every game, she's just stacking more evidence into a conversation that no longer feels like theory, it feels like something unfolding in real time. Angel Reese, meanwhile, has been dealing with the tougher side of that professional jump, where nobody is really questioning the talent, but consistency becomes the real battleground. Because the league has a way of stripping away all the narratives until only one thing is left standing: performance. And off the court, listen, this story takes another turn into modern sports branding, where visibility can sometimes hit just as hard as what happens in the game itself. Reese's partnerships and social media presence keep her locked into the cultural conversation, even on nights when the basketball side gets more unforgiving. Then you add the financial layer. Hold up. This is where things always heat up again, because discussions around WNBA salaries instantly turn into a bigger debate about value, exposure, and recognition. And Reese speaking openly about those financial realities just adds more fuel to the fire. Not because it's shocking, but because it plugs directly into a much larger conversation about expectations versus earnings in women's sports. At that point, every comment stops being just a quote and starts getting treated like cultural analysis in real time. At the same time, Caitlin Clark's focus stays locked on performance and development, feeding into the growing perception that one player is actively building a brand while the other is building something closer to a legacy that's still unfolding in real time. And then you've got the training narrative, hold up, where elite coaching connections get treated like shortcuts to greatness, like working with high-profile trainers can somehow compress years of development into one off-season jump. But basketball doesn't really respect shortcuts like that, because at the highest level, it's not about who's teaching you, it's about how fast you can actually turn instruction into execution when the pressure doesn't stop for your growth. And that's especially important in today's game, where scrutiny doesn't wait for patience, it demands proof right away. So every single matchup becomes both a stage and a stress test happening at the same time. Meanwhile, Clark is operating in a space where her impact already feels established rather than theoretical, and every performance just adds another layer on top of a reputation that isn't being created anymore, but expanded, sharpened, and constantly reinforced. That's where the narrative starts to fold into its most ironic version, because what was once framed as a straight-up rivalry slowly turns into a contrast study, where one path is accelerating inside the league structure, while the other is still figuring out how that structure even responds. And as the conversation keeps spiraling through fans, media, and highlight culture, the underlying truth gets harder to dodge, because in pro sports, ambition is loud, but outcomes are louder. And once everything shifts back to the court, the tone changes completely, because what feels like rivalry off the floor becomes something way more unforgiving when the ball is actually in play. There's no room left for interpretation, only execution under pressure that doesn't care about reputation, hype, or social media momentum. Every possession starts to reveal the small details fans often miss online, like how quickly Caitlin Clark reads defensive rotations, how cleanly she moves without the ball, and how efficiently she turns half-open looks into real production instead of forcing shots that stall momentum. That's where Caitlin Clark's game starts to separate itself in a way that doesn't feel like just one skill advantage. It feels like a full offensive system living inside one player.
Because of her passing, shooting, and tempo control, all blend into a style that forces defenses to react not just to actions, but to consequences that spread across the entire floor. She doesn't just score, she creates scoring opportunities for everyone around her, and that difference alone is what makes defenses adjust before the game even finds its rhythm. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is still in that balancing act between raw potential and real refinement, because the tools are clearly there, but turning them into consistent nightly production is what's being tested at this level. And the truth is, the WNBA doesn't really offer slow development. It forces immediate adjustment with no easy learning curve. So while all of that plays out on the court, the outside conversation keeps inflating everything into something bigger than basketball, turning stat lines into statements and highlights into ammunition for whichever side people have already decided to believe in.
But inside the teams, the reality is way more grounded, because coaches aren't thinking about narratives at all. They're locked in on decision-making and defensive effort, whether a player can actually be trusted when the game hits those late moments where every possession gets heavier and every mistake carries real weight. And that kind of trust doesn't come from statements or ambition. It's built through repetition, film work, taking corrections, and then actually applying those corrections when the game speeds up and the noise turns everything into controlled chaos. Caitlin Clark's early professional run shows that kind of adaptability, where every game looks like another layer of comfort being added, almost like she's expanding her control over the league's tempo instead of just adjusting to it. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is still in that phase where different timelines feel like they're colliding under the same spotlight, one already accelerating, the other still building momentum. And here's the irony. Both narratives are being shaped by attention, but attention in performance-driven environments doesn't spread evenly. It gravitates toward impact, and impact is measured not by noise or visibility, but by how often a player actually shifts the direction of a game when it matters most. That's why Caitlin Clark's performances often feel like they carry this quiet inevitability. Like even when she's not putting up massive scoring numbers, her presence still controls spacing, tempo, and the way both teams have to operate on the floor. At the same time, Angel Reese remains at the center of the conversation because her personality and visibility are major parts of her profile, turning even developmental stretches into a much bigger cultural discussion beyond the box score. But here's where the league simplifies everything. Listen to this. Professional basketball eventually compresses all that noise into one constant question every night. Can a player consistently affect winning when elite minds specifically design defenses to take away what they do best? And as that question repeats game after game in the WNBA, it slowly strips everything down until only production and real impact remain. Because in the end, basketball doesn't remember predictions or debates, it remembers production. And every player, no matter how loud the conversation gets around them, eventually has to answer the same quiet question. What do you actually do when everything is on the line? Nothing else is left to hide behind.